The U.S. border and immigration crisis is a polarizing topic. Yet, what if I told you that the solution lies in all of us coming together across our differences to ask the hard questions that aren't being asked in the mainstream media? Hey there, online world. I'm Amber Yang for wanttoknow.info and peers. Welcome to our Mindful News Brief series, where we discuss highlights of our weekly newsletter summaries with nuance, uncensored investigation, and compassion for all sides. The partisan culture wars in the media drown out any meaningful discussion of the real and current threats to children's safety, human rights, privacy, and local governments when discussing the border crisis. While we've been told by presidents from both political parties that strong border policies are being enforced, in reality it's quite different. According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection figures, millions of migrants are coming across the U.S.-Mexico border every year. One of this week's news articles is on the 300,000 migrants secretly flown into the U.S. by the Biden administration in 2023 that U.S. taxpayer dollars paid for. People on the left and right are calling for greater government transparency about what cities people are being flown to and which airports are being used. Whether you believe in open borders or not, any influx of millions of migrants raises concerning questions. For example, city budgets are under extreme pressure to provide services for the influx of migrants, while American taxpayer dollars are being used to fuel war and violence all over the world, instead of addressing the rampant crime, homelessness, and crumbling infrastructure within our own country. In order to track the massive influx of people crossing the border has become a testing ground for discriminatory facial surveillance technologies, spy tools, and experimental AI technologies that are being used by law enforcement agencies. Some of these technologies are being developed by defense contractors plagued with scandals, from organized crime to espionage. ICE facilities are plagued with sexual abuse reports, and most cases aren't being investigated. Other large government-funded facilities are housing thousands of undocumented children, many of them run by defense contractors and private prison companies, some of which are facing lawsuits for sexual and physical child abuse. Yet here is what's most concerning. While Trump-era policies forcibly separated children from their families in devastating ways, the tens of thousands of children currently missing under the Biden administration should alarm people just as much. Yet when you look at mainstream media coverage on the issue, this is seldom discussed. According to Customs and Border Protection statistics, unaccompanied children who arrive at the border has swelled from over 33,000 in 2020 to more than 152,000 in 2022. Meanwhile, a report by the Center for Public Integrity revealed how thousands of migrant children disappear every year. Worst off, there is no clear local, state, or federal government agency responsible for searching for missing children or investigating why a growing number have disappeared. Here's what Health and Human Services whistleblower Tara Lee Rodas had to say about the matter.
I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. Now, whether it's intentional or not, the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation. And that is why I blew the whistle in 2021. We need to change the culture of speed over safety. Stop retaliating against whistleblowers. Stop retaliating against the people who are trying to tell the truth to save the children.
Aaron Stevenson, a whistleblower from the Department of Homeland Security, confirmed this horrific reality. Stevenson was a federal employee for Department of Homeland Security, tasked with identifying and tracking transnational organized criminals and traffickers. When a case showed up where a watch-listed criminal was sponsoring an unaccompanied child who had arrived at the U.S. border, he began to notice a pattern. Many criminals, including sex traffickers across the world, were becoming sponsors for unaccompanied children. Worst off, when he tried to track down who was monitoring and vetting the sponsors, he couldn't find any information about it. Coalition Against Trafficking International estimates that 60% of Latin American children who cross the border alone or with smugglers posing as biological family members have been abused in child pornography or for drug trafficking. This shocking statistic comes at a time when the $150 billion industry of human trafficking is becoming more profitable than drugs and guns. Why is this not making front page news? Looking back at history, the US military intelligence war machine has contributed to this situation. Since its beginning, the CIA has been directly involved in the overthrowing of democratically elected presidents in foreign countries to exploit those countries' resources under the guise of fighting communism. These operations involved backing militant extremists and terrorist groups all over the world. For example, the U.S. Army School of Americas trained hundreds of human rights abusers who have committed genocide, torture, political assassinations, and many other crimes against humanity. These efforts have produced lasting instability and target countries plagued with bloody civil wars, narco-terrorism, and economic devastation. These are among the countries that people are fleeing from today. These topics can be difficult to stomach, and these considerations also don't fully encompass the layers of complexity regarding the immigration issue. Still, these core concerns can really bring us together across our differences to ask a few core questions. What would real media coverage on this issue look like beyond identity politics and partisan polarization? What would real government protection and oversight look like when it comes to vetting the caregivers and sponsors responsible for unaccompanied children? And given the shocking sex trafficking scandals within high levels of government, is it possible that powerful people are somehow benefiting from this situation? And lastly, what would a real humanitarian, compassionate approach look like, where instead of vilifying those who are coming into our country, we acknowledge that most people are fleeing horrific situations in their home countries and they need a safe place to go? How do we help make that happen? I'm pretty sure it doesn't look like kids in cages in Walmart, tens of thousands of missing children, and cities overwhelmed by the mass influx of migrants with no federal support. In the description below, you'll find more resources and important information about this topic that won't make mainstream news. Disturbing information like this can paradoxically remind us of the greater good. It's the courage of the people and the love for the common good that brings these injustices to light, fueling uncensored dialogue and constructive action.